Hari Om. Ajam nirvikalpam nirakaramekam. Ajam nirvikalpam nirakaramekam. Niranandamanandam purnam. Param nirgunam nirvichecham niriham. Parabrahmarupam Ganesham bhajema. Parabrahmarupam Ganesham bhajema. Sri Krishna Namaha. Namaste friends. Welcome to session 120 of Bhagavad Gita verse by verse. We have commenced study of new chapter 16 called Daivi Sampat Vibhaga Yoga from last session. We heard Lord Krishna giving the introduction to his unique chapter in his first few verses. From verse 7 to 21, Lord Krishna will be describing Asuri character. In today's class, we will study 6 of them from verse 7 to 12. At the end of the class, Kumari Anika will be chanting those verses we studied today. Before we listen to the introduction of today's subject matter from Dr. Hekte sir, it's time now to have a recap of previous class. Dr. Meenal Kekatpure is with us to refresh our memory and explain the verses we studied in the previous session. Dr. Meenal, please.
Thank you, sir. Namaste. A person's goal of life and the way of life are closely related, and they also influence each other. This is also what our Vedas teach us. The Veda Purva part deals with the way of life, while the Veda Anta part deals with the goals of life. Lord Krishna talks about 2 kinds of lifestyles in Bhagavad Gita. One that is conducive to spirituality and moksha, which is called as Shreyas in Kathopanishad. So the next slide, please. And the other, which is materialistic goal-oriented and was known as the prayers. These have been called as Daivi Sampat and Asuri Sampat respectively in this chapter. Our character can be compared to wealth, specifically inner wealth that a person possesses, and hence character is called as Sampat here. And this chapter is titled as Daiva Asuri Sampat Vibhaga Yoga. The scriptures classify human character into 3 types. Next slide, please, sir. Dvesha Pradhana Swabhava or the Raksha Swabhava, where there is lot of Dvesha, Krodha and is Himsa Pradhan. This Swabhava is not conducive to spiritual growth and progression, and instead it causes a spiritual regression. The second is a Raga Pradhana Swabhava or Asuri Swabhava, where there is Raga, attachment leading to Kama and a lot of desires. This is also not conducive for spiritual progress, and instead it causes a spiritual stagnation. The third Swabhava is Jnana Pradhana, for whom spiritual knowledge alone is the life goal, and Krishna calls them Daiva Swabhava. With this background, we will briefly revise verse numbers 1 to 6 of the 16th chapter. In verse numbers 1 to 3, Sri Krishna enumerates the 26 virtues belonging to a person born with Daivi Sampat. Next slide, please, sir. And these include Abhayam, meaning spiritual courage and faith, Sattva Samshuddhihi, that is purity of mind, Jnana Yoga Vyavasthitihi, that is a committed pursuit of Jnana Yoga, which includes Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. Danam or charity, Damaha or mastery of sense organs, Yajnaha meaning worship. Yajna includes 2 kinds of worship. The regular or the ceremonial worship, which we call as puja, and the second is a karma yoga attitude of Ishwar Arpan Bhavna and Ishwar Prasada Bhavna, which we have already studied in the 3rd chapter titled as Karma Yoga. And this will convert all my karmas into a yajna. The next virtue is Swadhyaya, meaning scriptural study, which is also one of the Pancha Mahayajnas called as Brahma Yajna. The next virtue is Tapaha, that is austerities, Arjavam, which means integrity and enjoying a harmonious personality, Ahimsa, which is avoidance of violence at all levels, Kayika, Vachika and Manasik level, Satyam or truthfulness, and Akrodha, that is anger management, are the next of the virtues. Tyaga or renunciation is the next, which is twofold. External renunciation or sannyas and internal renunciation or vairagyam, which is nothing but mentally dropping the ownership notion, or mamakara and understanding that nothing, including this body, really belongs to me. Then next is shanti or freedom from violent, stressful emotions and having an equanimous mind. Apai sunam, that is not publicizing the faults of other people, are the next of the virtues. Then daya bhuteshu, that is being compassionate towards all living beings. Alolupatvam, not yielding to the temptations of sense objects. Mardavam, which is gentleness. Ri, which is modesty. Achapalam, that is freedom from restlessness. And teja, that is smartness, are the next of the virtues. The next virtue is kshama, which has several meanings, but here it specifically means the non-arrival of anger or angerlessness. Dhriti, meaning fortitude or perseverance, shocham or cleanliness, adroha, that is ahimsa at mental level, and nati manita or freedom from pride, that is vinaya, are the remaining virtues. All these virtues are present in a person with Daivi Sampat. A sattvic person is born with Daivi Sampat, but if these virtues are not there from birth, then they need to be cultivated. In verse numbers 4, 5, and 6, Krishna talks about the 6 vices which constitute the Asuri Sampat found in a materialistic person, and they include Dambaha. Next slide, please, sir. That is pomp and show or ostentation. Darpaha, that is arrogance and disrespect at action or karmic level. And Abhimana, that is harboring a superiority complex, which is at bhavana or thought level. Krodha, that is anger, and Parushyam, which is rudeness and impoliteness in both action as well as language. And lastly, Ajnanam, which is ignorance of ethics and morals. In other words, Dharma, Adharma, Aviveka are the vices which are naturally there in a person who has Rajasic and Tamasic tendencies. In the upcoming verse number 7 to 21, Krishna further elaborates the Asuri Sampat and also points out that if one wishes for a spiritual progress and moksha, then the lifestyle must be governed by Daivi Sampat and not by Asuri or Rakshas Sampat. Thank you. Hari Om. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Meenal, for an excellent summary of the verses that we studied in the last class. Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. This is the second class on the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and we know that in the Antima or Charama Shatkam of the Gita, almost at least in 3 of the 6 chapters, there is a lot of, at least in 4 of these chapters, there will be many verses devoted to values. We have already seen 20 values that have come from verse 8 onwards in the 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Amanitvam, Adamhitvam. The 15th chapter the Bhagavad Gita seems to reach a climax. In a way, it is the climax, and Krishna very nicely concludes by saying, Iti. Iti guhyatamam shastram idam uktam maya anaga. O Anaga, O Arjuna, the one who is so pure, who is free from all sin, to you I have told you the greatest secret that can give you total fulfillment in life. But Krishna has a doubt that all of us who represent Arjuna, are we suitable receptacles for Vedanta? That means, as mentioned earlier in the last class and emphasized by Dr. Meenal just now, there should be an accord between the way of life and our goals in life. And if there is a disparity, our goals is Parama Purushartha or Moksha. When we have the highest of goals, but if there is a disparity as far as values are concerned, then it becomes a problem. There are 2 important checkpoints, and if values are not there, we do not have access for Brahma Vidya. The first is Jnana Yogyata or Sadhana Chatustaya Sampanna. There's certain eligibility for Brahma Vidya. And if a person is not morally and ethically qualified, Jnana Yogyata becomes a problem. For those who might have bypassed the first checkpoint and who have reached to Jnanam, the benefit of Jnanam, that means when Jnanam flowers into Jnana Nishta, the second block becomes when a person again has limitations as far as values. And that is why although these chapters, the 16th chapter and the 17th chapter, is something that we know very well, it is so important to be able to spend some time and to re-look into our life and to see how we can bring in values in our life. If there is a third checkpoint, and that is a posthumous form of moksha in what is called Krama Mukti. Adi Shankara in his Bhashyam has mentioned that in order to get Krama Mukti, the steps that take us are truthfulness and is arjavam. That means if a person has been truthful in life, a person is able to attain to Krama Mukti. I have said this before and I will say this again because I love these words of Tagore, which he says that if I can be a useful, if I can be a pure instrument, then the amount of purity in my body, mind is how I'm able to express the Lord. I shall read, I shall ever try to keep my body pure, knowing that thy living touch is upon all my limbs. I shall ever try to keep all untruths out from my thoughts, knowing that thou art the truth which has kindled the light of reason in my mind. I shall ever try to drive all evil from my heart and keep my love in flower, knowing that thou hast thy seat in the inmost shrine of my heart. And it shall be my endeavor to reveal thee through my actions, knowing it is thy power that gives me strength to act. Life of my life. I would like to talk about two terms which come in different parts of the along our course of Brahma Vidya, especially when we are talking of Jivatma, Paramatma, Aikyam. Swamiji brings in these two terms which we should be very clear, and it is very relevant when we are talking about values also. What do you mean by Vachyartha and what do you mean by Lakshartha? Now there are synonyms for this. Vachyartha means literal meaning, primary meaning, the commonly used meaning. Sometimes it is also called Mukhyartha. So one word is called Mukhyartha. The second is called Lakshyartha. There is a certain context where the primary meaning does not become relevant. And therefore, you have to take a contextual meaning in a certain context. So we should be very clear when we have to use Vachyartha and when do we have to use Lakshyartha. And generally, it is straightforward. In our conversations, we use it and we all understand it. We don't have to. But when it comes to Vedantic discussion, there are certain places where Vachyartha is relevant, certain places where the implied meaning or Lakshyartha becomes relevant. And here I will talk in the question of values. Because everyone knows what is good and what is bad, what is there so much to discuss about it. That is why even the topic of values becomes meaningful only when it is discussed and taught to us by a guru. Now, these are some values we all know. Ahimsa paramo dharma. Matra devo bhava. Pitra devo bhava. Acharya devo bhava. My mother is akin to God and I treat my mother with all reverence. We know from the Ramayana story when Kaikeyi cleared the path for her son Bharata to become king and she tells him, now you will be crowned the king. He was so upset with his mother that he decided not to treat her like his mother at all. And he said, I'm not going to treat you like my mother. And even though he rejected his mother, Bharata is still revered because in that context it was relevant. Similarly, Pitra Devo Bhava. When Prahalada was instructed by his father Hiranyakashipu not to worship Vishnu, the son goes against the wills of his father and Prahalada is a great hero. One of the highest respects we have is for our teacher, Acharya. And yet, Arjuna had to fight against his own teacher, Dronacharya. Although we know Ahimsa is the highest of dharmas, Krishna in the context of Adharma in the Bhagavad Gita. Remember the context, and that is why The Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata has to be seen from the context. If you see it out of context, it looks very irrelevant how Krishna will not only encourage, he will ensure that the battle happens, because the situation is not is dharma versus adharma. Let me tell you a story where you will understand what is this Vachyartha and which is Lakshyartha. Because in our own lives, sometimes we experience certain conflicts. And whenever there is a conflict of values, we sometimes need a lot of courage to be able to go against Vachyartha or conventional wisdom. Because a lot of wrong happens when a person justifies his action based on conventional meaning or literal meaning. This is a story of a certain community where there was a person whom the whole community knew he was innocent, not only innocent, but a great person. But as there were certain invading troops, and the invading troops wanted that person, a particular person. So this whole town was hiding a particular person whom they knew was innocent. But then it was surrounded by troops, and the troops or the commander comes to the village headman and says, I know there is a certain person of this description and your community is hiding him. I want you to hand him over, otherwise your whole community will be destroyed. Now the village headman and the priest got together to see how they can solve the situation. So they looked into the various scriptural passages in the Bible, and they came across one passage that in order to save the community, it is okay to sacrifice one life. They were so relieved. They had a scriptural sanction, and so based on the sanction, they told and to save their own lives, they told the invading troops that there is a person in so and so place, and they subjected him to a lot of physical torture. The whole village heard the screams and the cries of a person who was being tortured until he died. Years later, another person comes to the same community and says, was there a person of such a description who had come to your town? They said, yes. Can you tell me what happened to him? Where is he now? And they told him the whole story. And the person was shocked. He said, this is the prophet who has come to save our whole community. And why did you allow this to happen to him? They said, what could we do? We went according to the scriptural guidelines. And this is the scriptural guideline that we went according to. So the man looked at him and said, did you look into his eyes? See, the scriptures may say it is better to sacrifice one person in order to save a nation. This is the scriptural statement. But he said, did you look into his eyes? Now, if you would look into his eyes, you would see the innocence of a revered person. And that is why in life, sometimes we do come across conflicts. And that is why more than our conscience, sometimes our conscience tells you what is right and what is wrong. Our conscience is pre-programmed by society and by values that have been given by society. There are moments, as we heard in the Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata, where one should go by consciousness or awareness. And awareness will tell you what is right and what is wrong. We will begin today's class by verse 7, which will be explained to us by Dr. Sandhya. Dr. Sandhya, please.
Hari Om. Verse 7 reads, Pravritim cha nivritim cha jana navadur asura na shaucham napi chacharo na satyam teshu vidyate. Those who are asuric do not comprehend virtuous tendencies or how to abstain from vice. Cleanliness, proper conduct, and truthfulness are not found in them. Now let us remember that an asuric person is defined here as a person who has only prayers as his goal in life. He does not aspire for spiritual upliftment or sadhana, and therefore he is only looking for materialistic goals and how to achieve them. Now here, therefore, he does not have any sense of right or wrong in what he does to achieve these materialistic goals. Next slide. This is a complete broad outline of the difference between a person who has got Asuri Sampat as also a person who is Daivi Sampat. Asuri Sampat is a person who is Rajasic. He is a Prakrita Purusha. That means he is only worldly. The two goals or the Purusharthas that he practices are Artha and Kama, increase in the wealth and fulfillment of all his desires to achieve perfect material ambitions. How does he base his action? On what he likes or dislikes, again only on raga or dvesha, and what is enjoined in our scriptures and Vaidya Shastras, what should we do, that is pravritim, he does not care to know or even follow. That means he may go on to illegal paths, unrighteous paths, whatever is required for him to fulfill his goal of artha and kama. Again, things that are to be avoided, like criminal activities, illegality, and things like that, he does not care for, he does not know or follow, and therefore his only goal in life is to achieve what he wants based on what he likes. And therefore, the dharma and the adharma of life itself, his whole pursuit in life, as also his actions, he is not bothered about any of it. Compare this to a person who is a Samskrita Purusha or also has a Daivi Sampat. This is a kind of person who understands that there is a right path, the goal of life is liberation or moksha, and therefore, though he may also have worldly desires, he also tries to pursue them only in the right path of right and wrong. He knows his ultimate goal is a spiritual life, but his basis of action on all days, at all times, is what is good, and he avoids what is to be avoided, and therefore he is righteous in what he does. He follows his spiritual goal. He does not do what the Shastras and his Guru tell him not to do, and dharma and adharma is very much a part of his life because he knows that only by following adharma and dharma laws that he is going to progress along the spiritual path and be successful in his sadhana. Next slide. Bhagavan here, according to those many virtues of the sattvic person that he has said earlier, he or the person with the Daivi Sampat, here he characterizes three specific things which are not there in a person of Asurik Sampat. Na Shaucham, he has no purity. Physical and environmental cleanliness, of course, is there. But most importantly, Bhagavan is talking about purity of mind, purity of thought, and purity of action. And this is where our advancement in spiritual life is going to come only if we have these. This is not possessed by a person of Asurik Sampat. Then our scriptures and our religious texts tell us that we should have a daily religious discipline, that is early awakening, rituals and prayers every day, and at all times, remembering the goal of life, we must really lead our life and our thoughts according to a higher spiritual plane. Again, a person of Asurik Sampat does not follow these because he does not think that anything is required except complete material success. And more importantly, na satyam teshu vidyate. He has no morals in what he does. He is not truthful in what he does. He can choose any path as long as his raga, dvesha, or artha and kama are fulfilled. He has no value for higher life or mental understanding, and therefore he spends his entire time only in materialistic goals. Therefore, the goal of having a human birth actually is completely wasted according to Bhagavan, and therefore he calls him that of an Asurik Sampat. Therefore, this man has no Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam, which are required for us to achieve our moksha in this life itself. And in the further verses, Bhagavan talks about various other qualities of the Asurik man. Now, it is also important to us to look at our own selves and see what type of life we are leading, how much we are pursuing the right and wrong, and how we are going to lead all our lives, and whether we are really trying to progress along the spiritual paths. If we have any Asuric qualities in our mind and in our hearts, it is up to us with God's grace to remove them and become Daivi Sampat. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you very much, madam, for a very nice explanation of this verse with beautiful slides and a nice tabular column. The next speaker is Venkatesh Prasad, and after that, I will not be coming in between each speaker so that you will get a little more time. Venkatesh, please.
Thank you, sir. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Continuing with the Asuri Sampat from where Dr. Sandhya has said in 16.7, next is 16.8. The verse goes like this. Asatyam pratishtham jagadahuranishwaram aparaspara sambhutam kimanyat kama haitukam. They say the world is without truth, without dharma, without God, born out of the union of the male and female. The world is caused by desire. Next slide, sir. People who say like this are totally irreligious people. They are not in any way connected with religion or spirituality, which is based on the Vedic scriptures. First, they do not believe in the Vedas. Asatyam. Satyam here means Veda Pramanam, and Asatyam means that they do not believe in Veda Pramanam, even though Veda is like 1,000 mothers. Shankaracharya tells elsewhere that the Vedas are like Matra Pitra Sahasebhya Abhihiteshini, superior to 1,000 mothers and fathers. Vedas are interested only in our well-being, but in spite of that, they do not believe in Veda Pramana. They are utterly Nastika people. And if they do not accept Veda Pramanam, apratishthante, they do not believe in dharma. Pratishtha means dharma. Vedas say dharma or morality alone sustains the creation. Dharma means moral or ethical order of the universe, that which sustains the universe. Dhru means to sustain. Dharanat dharmaha, moral order alone sustains. Once the morality goes from the society, there will be utter distress and confusion, and a society cannot survive for long. And therefore, scriptures talk about dharma. But these people do not believe in dharma because dharma is not visible to our eyes. They believe in the physical order of the universe because it is scientifically provable. And therefore, they say there is no dharma or adharma. There is no punyam or papam. And therefore, there is neither previous birth nor next birth. Enjoy this life, following whatever you feel like doing. Next slide, sir. And then, who is the creator of this universe? They do not believe in God also. Jagat Anishwaram Ahu. They say creation can come by itself. The scientists have proved that the Big Bang took place at such and such a time. Thereafter, the world has evolved by itself with the help of chemical and physical laws. We do not see any intelligent principle behind. And therefore, we do not require a God. They reject everything. They believe in only two things, money and entertainment. Earning means artha purushartha. Enjoyment means kama purushartha. Continue that till death. This is the philosophy of materialistic people. And therefore, Jagadanishwaram Ahu. Whereas, what is the belief of the traditional people? We say God is the creator of the world. And along with the world, God has created the Vedas also. And Vedas are the manuals which are meant to guide our life so that we can extract the best out of this human life. And what is the best we can extract? That is moksha itself. Next slide, sir. No Ishvara, no Vedas, no Dharma. Then how did this creation come? If God has not created us, how are we created? Very simple. We are created by our parents. And why is God necessary for that? Because of the male-female union, which is caused by karma or passion, we are born. And how are our parents born? Because of their parents. And so on. Why do we require a God at all unnecessary? And they will also argue spending money on temples is useless. Spending money on Abhisheka, etc. is useless. And can't that money be given to the poor? And why should we waste on the temples? And when we listen to those arguments, we also start having doubts. Perhaps they are correct. Whereas Vedas say spending money on God or dharma or puja, etc., can never be a waste. It is like pouring water at the root of the tree. When you pour water at the root of the tree, the water directly goes to the root, but in an invisible manner, that water goes to all the branches. I do not see, but every cell of the tree gets benefit. Similarly, Bhagavan is the root of this creation. Where did we see in Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter, Urdhva Moola Madashakam Ashwatham Prahuravyayam, Abhisheka you do, Naivedyam you do, nothing goes waste. Ultimately, it is for the benefit of humanity. But a materialistic person will not accept that. And therefore, they argue, Aparaspara Sambhutam. Beings are born out of the union of their parents. Apara means male, Paraha means female. Aparaspara means male, female. That are parents. Sambhutam means born. All because of what? Kama Haitukam. Union is caused by Kama, desire for children. Harivom, thank you.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Etam drishtim avashtabhya nashtamanolpabuddhayaha prabhavantyugra karmanaha kshayaya jagato hitaha. Bereft of true self-knowledge, the demonic-minded fabricate distorted views of the truth with their unique and impure intellects. An example of this is the theory of Charvaka, a well-known materialistic philosopher in Indian history. He said, Yavad jiveta sukham jivet, rinam kritva ghritam pivet, bhasmi bhutasya dehasya, punaragamanam kutaha. As long as you live, enjoy yourself. If drinking ghee gives you pleasure, then do so even if you have to take a debt for the purpose. When the body is cremated, you will cease to exist and will not come back in the world again. So do not worry of any karmic consequences of your actions. In this fashion, the demonic-minded reject the eternality of the soul and the possibility of karmic reactions so that they may engage in self-serving and even cruel deeds without any qualms. In history, humankind has repeatedly witnessed megalomaniac dictators and emperors such as Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, etc., who were motivated by their perverse views of the truth and brought about untold suffering and devastation to the world. Yetam drishtim avashtabhya. These Asuric people entertain or hold on to the materialistic philosophy, which is whatever sense organs can see, that alone exists. That there can be things beyond our sense organs and which can be known through other means of knowledge, they do not accept. Our culture talks about a sixth sense organ. Veda is the sixth sense organ, which can never be proved or disproved by the available 5 sense organs. You use the Veda Pramana and study with faith. You will be open to a new wonderful world, which is not accessible to science, which is not acceptable to the sense organs. We're going to get an Apaurushaya Prapancha, which is beneficial to us only. By rejecting the Veda, they claim that they are rational people. Nashtamanaha, they are lost souls because they are losing a huge chunk of the creation, which is accessible to only Veda Pramana. The very definition of the Veda, according to Shayanacharya, the most celebrated commentator on Vedic texts, is Ishtaprapti Anishta Parihara Yor Alaukikam Upayam Yo Grantho Vedayati Sa Vedaha, meaning that which contains the esoteric ways to achieve the desired objects and to avoid the undesired is called the Veda, which cannot be known through any other pramana, that is pratyaksha or anumana. So nashtamanaha, they are lost souls, all because of alpa buddhayaha. They do not understand the concept of pramana. Vedic field is different, scientific field is different. Science has no right to prove or disprove the Vedic teaching. This is the significance of the Pramanam. Therefore, they foolishly try to prove the Vedas scientifically. They will never succeed, and instead of understanding their foolishness, they reject the Vedas. They hold on to a materialistic philosophy, and once artha and kama becomes dominant in life, when dharma is not valued, then compromise with values becomes natural. Violation of values becomes natural. Ugra karmanaha, they are people of violence, violating the ethical or moral order of the creation, violating dharma, which is the health of the universe. Adharma is the sickness of the society. As a sick body cannot survive, a sick society cannot also survive. And therefore, ugra karmanaha, they hurt dharma, and the society in turn indirectly prabhavanti, and jagataha kshayaya, they become the cause of the destruction of the humanity. And the tragedy is when the scientific knowledge increases, value for dharma decreases. Knowledge without wisdom becomes dangerous. Knowledge is material knowledge. Wisdom is dharmic knowledge. When material knowledge increases without dharmic knowledge, that society will have problems. And therefore, Jagatak Shayaya, they will cause destruction of universe. Therefore, Ahitaha. Ahitaha means they become enemies of humanity. Educated people without dharma will become enemies. Somewhere here it is very nicely said, according to Swamiji, Sakshara Rakshasaha Bhavanti. Hari Om.
Hari Om, Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. The verse goes like this. Kama Machritya Dushpuram Damba Mana Madhanvitaha Mohat Grihitva Sadgrahan Pravartante Suchidvrata. Given to insatiable lust, endowed with ostentation, pride, arrogance, due to delusion and pursuing false premises, they undertake impure vows. So we'll see the word meaning. Krishna continues to talk about Asuri Sampat. Kama is varieties of worldly desires for money, name, fame, position, profession, control, power, etc. Dushpuram, it is the desire which cannot be fulfilled. It is insatiable desire. It is vast, abundant. Dushpuram refers to lobha also, that is greed. Then dambaha is pomp and show. Manaha is pride. Madha, haughtiness. Anvitaha, endowed with all these things. Moha grihitva, because of moha, that is delusion, they hold on to asad grahan, that is adharmic resolve or false resolve. Pravartante, they undertake asuchi vrataha, that is impure vows. Krishna talks about the problem, that is materialistic philosophy or adharmic philosophy is artha and kama. Only two purusharthas which are not contained by or balanced by dharma, and artha and kama itself is not a problem. It becomes a problem when it is not balanced by dharma. Unbalanced artha and kama is materialism. This unbalanced kama will get converted into either krodha or lobha. Unfulfilled desire leads to anger, that is krodha. Fulfilled desire leads to greed or lobha. Usually these people are corrupt and violent and also violent. Dushpuram kamam ashritaha. There is no limit to materialistic desires. When one set of desires are fulfilled, new set will be ready. Swamiji compares it to mirage. From distance, there seems to be a water. When we go near it, it recedes further. Similarly, there is no end to the fulfillment of our desires, and it can never give total satisfaction. Damba mana madhanvitaha. Having fulfilled some few petty desires, people are endowed with pomp and show, pride and arrogance. And this is because of delusion, that is moha. Mohat grihitva satgrahan. People do not understand that any external object is of false value. Any amount of money, property, people around, job, etc., are all finite. This is limited by time and space. Finite can never become infinite and cannot that expect security from these. This thoughtful vows human beings do not have. Pravartante, so they undertake all kinds of ratam, which are all asuchi, evil resolve to get more. So, to some extent, they go to black magic, that is tamasic puja or ratam, to destroy their enemies who are coming in their way of greed. One of the Brihaspati Sutras declares that karma is the supreme end of man. To conclude, to have santosha and contentment, artha and kama should be balanced by dharma. Not to expect peace, happiness, and security from external objects, which is always finite, false, and insecure. Thank you, Hari Om.
Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. In this verse, Lord Krishna elaborates on why people are always stressed today, proving again that the Bhagavad Gita couldn't be more relevant today, even though it happened 5,000 years ago. Coming to the verse, Chintamapariye. Sorry, sir, I'll start again. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. In this verse, Lord Krishna elaborates on why people are always stressed today, proving again that the Bhagavad Gita couldn't be more relevant today, even though it happened 5,000 years ago. Coming to the verse, Chintamaparimayam cha pralayantamupashritaah kamopabhoga paramam etavaditi nishchitaah. Given to deep and lifelong anxiety and holding enjoyment of sense objects as the highest goal, they are convinced in their belief that this is the highest limit of joy. Next slide, sir. Most people pursue the tangible material goals, artha and kama, because fruits can be enjoyed immediately. Our current model of economic growth is also designed to make us voracious consumers of material objects and sense pleasures. The advertising industry, irrespective of what product they sell, target human insecurities, promising us lasting peace, happiness, and security, and we buy it. So our happiness is now dependent on the expected perfect functioning of these external factors. For example, if we like gadgets, we will be happy if and only if our new device works perfectly. If it doesn't, we go into a downward spiral of dissatisfaction and anxiety about how to make it work. Sri Krishna flags this tendency of depending on unpredictable external factors for our happiness. Because though they may give us some happiness for those moments when we are in their company, they often leave us with a trail of aparimayam chinta, constant stress, because we are not in control over all the external factors upon which we have come to depend on for our happiness. This leads to more craving, and we endlessly indulge in this futile pursuit, pralayantam upashritaha, until the end of pralaya. Next slide, sir. So why do we pursue the enjoyment of material pleasures, even though we know they don't last? Because we are convinced that this kama upabhoga is the highest joy we can experience. Parama etavaditi nishchitaha. Like the frog in the well which doesn't know of the ocean and thinks its well is the end of the world. We must do well to remember the effects that they create atrupti, discontentment, bandha, they trap us in bondage, and are dukkha mishritaha. They breed sorrow either by their gain or loss. Therefore, the spiritual person revels in only one thing, the Atma. Atmani eva Atmana tushtaha, because the Atma is the only source of permanent peace, security, and happiness in the world. Coming to the next verse. Asha pasha shatir baddhaha कामक्रोधपरायणाः इहन्ते कामभोगार्थम् अन्यायेनार्थसञ्जयान्. Here, Sri Krishna says these people are bound, bandha, by the ropes of countless attachments, shatairi asha pashaha. Hence, they are always vulnerable, disturbed, and intensely experience kama and krodha, desire and anger. In this unbalanced mental state, they work harder and harder, ihante, to amass more wealth, artha sanjayan, by unrighteous means, anyayena. And they do this only for the sake of enjoyment of sense pleasures, kama bhogartham. Krishna's words couldn't be truer today when we see the all-pervasive corruption in society. Unfortunately, a materialistic society creates role models of such people, corrupting people's minds to strive for only such false ideals. So what is the way forward? Swami Paramarthananda emphasizes that Vedanta does not tell us not to earn wealth. It only tells us to be in a balanced frame of mind, to rightfully earn our wealth through Karma Yoga, to make enough time to perform the important Panchamahayagna, and most importantly, to make the pursuit of dharma and moksha more important than artha and kama, through which we can grow both spiritually and materially and help the society prosper as a whole. Thank you. Hari Om.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. अथ षोडशोऽध्यायः दैवासुरसम्पद्विभागयोगः प्रवृत्तिं च निवृत्तिं च जनान विदुरासुराः न शौचं नापि चाचारो न सत्यं तेषु विद्यते असत्यमप्रतिष्ठं ते जगदाहुरनीश्वरम् अपरस्परसम्भूतं किमन्यत् कामहैतुकम् एतां दृष्टिमवष्टभ्य नष्टात्मानोऽल्पबुद्धयः प्रभवन्त्युग्रकर्माणः क्षयाय जगतो हिताः काममाश्रित्य दुष्पूरं दम्भमानमदान्विताः मोहात् गृहीत्वा सद्ग्राहान् प्रवर्तन्ते शुचिव्रताः चिन्तामपरिमेयां च प्रलयान्तामुपाश्रिताः कामोपभोगपरमाः एतावदिति निश्चिताः आशापाशशतैर्बद्धाः कामक्रोधपरायणाः इहन्ते कामभोगार्थम् अन्यायेनार्थसञ्चयान् ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः हरिः ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ॐ Thank you.
Thank you, Anika, for effortless, flawless, and melodious chanting. Thank you, all teachers of the day, for a wonderful session. Thank you, all seekers, for your serious participation. Coming Monday, 7th November 2022, let us log in for session 34 of Disha for the discovery of inner strength and happiness at 6:45 p.m. In this episode of Disha, we will continue our study of 7th chapter along with Tattva Bodha topic on Bhakti Yoga. Hari Om. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.